afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me?
Good afternoon.
Yes, I'm hearing.
Hello?
Kamaria?
Okay. Welcome to the second session of our presentations conducted by members of the Water Resources Authority Jamaica. So I will start, the meeting will officially start now, so I will direct the way to our member who will do the introduction. Ms. Douglas?
Good morning. Well, good afternoon. So our speaker for today is Jeffrey Marshall. He's a chief hydrologist at the Water Resource Authority of Jamaica for approximately 4 years. My apologies. He attended the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology and Washington Lee University. However, he's originally from Spanish Town, Jamaica. He speaks Spanish, and one of his favorite quotes is, "The final test of a leader is that he leaves behind in other men the conviction and the will to carry on," by Walter Lippmann. With that being said, everyone, please give your undivided attention as Mr. Marshall as he comes to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Kimoy Marie, for the introduction. I really appreciate the kind words. And thank you very much for inviting me to do this presentation on dye tracing in Jamaica. Let me see if I can share the screen. I have a presentation that would be beneficial. Are we seeing the screen?
Yes,
we are.
All right, let me just start the slideshow mode. Let's go. Okay, seeing it now? Good. All right, so the presentation I'll be doing today for the next half hour or so is just to give a brief overlay of dye tracing in Jamaica, historical dye tracing investigations in Jamaica, as well as current dye tracing that the WRA has been doing from 2016 to the present. So first thing I would say, what is dye tracing in general? Now, dye tracing is the use of fluorescent tracers or dyes to track the movement, flow, and direction of groundwater, usually through karstic regions. And as you know, karstic regions are regions that are usually built around limestone, and they feature many dissolution cavities, caves, sinkholes, much faulting, and they're characterized by cockpit scenery, or called karst scenery. And in these regions, the water resources are very interesting because they flow on the surface and then they'll sink going underground. And sometimes it's hard to find out, we see what are the connections. Like when a river sinks, where exactly does it come out? How does groundwater connect and show in that region? And dye tracing is an exercise that is used a lot of times to prove where the connectivity is for those things. So some dyes used in dye tracing exercises include rhodamine, fluorescein, and uranine. And they've also used fungal spores historically as a ways to try to trace water flow as well. The effectiveness of dyes will depend on their reaction to light, because if the dyes are exposed to sunlight, they'll break down, some of them will break down pretty quickly. So you generally choose your dye based on its resistivity to breaking down and how much underground storage, or how much underground travel you expect the flow to do once you've injected it. In this picture here, you'll see me doing an injection. This is at Bottom River Cave in St. Anne. I'll talk a little bit more about where exactly in St. Anne this is and what connection we were trying to do with that injection. And when you're doing a dye trace exercise, you normally have to do a basin study to first identify what are the potential sinking and the right emergent points of the flow that you're investigating. You're trying to see where it made this flow come out. So once you do that basin study, whether it's a desk study or actual field investigation, then you identify where you're going to put your receptor. And the receptor, if you give me a quick second, see if I can find an example. Yeah, a receptor is usually a charcoal, with a bit of charcoal in the bags that you put in the water that will pick up the dye. So in my hand, you'll see an example of a collected receptor. So once you've identified where the points may be that the dye may come out, you're going to install a receptor at that point that you will hope that they will pick up the dye, and you collect the receptors on a regular basis. So once you inject the dye, like for example, my colleague Maurice Wallace is seen here injecting the dye at Blue River Cave. This is rhodamine dye, and the dye in the previous picture was fluorescein. Once you inject the dye, then you will go out thereafter on like a regular basis to try to switch the receptors, and then once you switch the receptors, you'll see if any dye was collected on the receptor. So, and you switch it regularly to see where it will emerge. And then you'll also, once you've collected the receptors, you carry them, you send them to a lab. We send them to a lab in Western Kentucky University for analysis to see what was the concentration on the dye, if any. And if you have the dye collected on at least 2 of the receptors, that's a positive trace that the dye you injected does come out, or the flow does connect to that place where you have where you put the dye receptor. And so that will help you to also, the frequency at which you collect them will help you to identify the travel time. So if you inject today and you go next week and the week after and the week after, and you don't find any dye on the one you collected next week, or you find the dye on the one you collected the week after and the week after, then you can kind of get an idea of how fast the dye travels from when you injected it going into the next collecting period. In Jamaica, the basins that are karstic that has potential for dye tracing, which have been done before and which we want to explore as a WRA, include the Martha Bay Basin, that's here in Trelawney side for the most part, the dry Harbour Mountains Basin, which covers most of St. Anne and a significant part of Trelawney and parts of St. Elizabeth and Clarendon, the Upper Rio Cobre, WMU, and the Black River Basin. And most of the information that I'm about to share is coming from the book Jamaica Underground. If you haven't read it, it's a very, very comprehensive resource on the caves of Jamaica. And it also provides a historical background of dye tracing that was known to the author at that time. And a lot of the information is coming from that, as well as from FAO reports of Jamaica's hydrology, which were done in the 1960s that are available at the WRA Doc Center for your review. And also some results that we at the WRA have done since 2016 to the present with our own dye trace investigations, trying to verify the past information and see what new information can be garnered. So first we're looking at the Upper Rio Cobre WMU. If you know the Rio Cobre River, the primary sources for that include the Rio Magno, Rio Doro, and the Rio Pedro. One that is hypothesized. The Pedro River was dye traced in 1963, and there wasn't any detection of any dye at any rising. Although they did try to inject some spores at the Pedro River in Kellett, and that was detected at Worthy Park in Loyalist Vale in St. Catherine, also in the Black River near Linston, and in the Rio Cobre at Bog Walk. So it's not yet known if all of the sinks in that region take the same underground course, because Pedro River, while that historical spore test had been done, it hadn't been verified and redone. So currently the WRA is performing dye injections on Pedro River. We actually injected the dye last month, and we've been setting receptors in the Rio Cobre and at other locations to see if the dye comes out there, along with other spring locations. The next map shows the map. This figure shows the map of the situation. If you see here, Pedro River sinks at this location where the mouse is. That's where it sinks. And you can see where it may possibly come out in this region here, which is at Worthy Park. Worthy Park Estate is all the sugarcane region here. And you also see the Rio Cobre. At this location of the Rio Cobre, it's actually seasonal. More times you go there, it's going to be dry, but you see a huge sinkhole. If you go there now with all this rain, you'll probably see the water flowing there. But generally speaking, at this side, it's usually dry. When we went out there to see if we could put a receptor here, there wasn't any water there to put a receptor. But other locations to consider for future dye trace testing includes Crofts River, which you see here, and the Henriquez Cave and the Sinking River at this side, which are historic, which we may check as well. The consideration right now is that all of these go to Rio Cobre coming out at some point in time, but it's not yet shown and proven. Other sinks in the Rio Cobre are more towards the side of Kitson Town. If you have the Mountain River at Watermount, that sinks coming off the basal aquiclude, and then it's thought that that Mountain River contributes to the Spring Garden Spring, if you know where Camp Verde is in St. Catherine, the spring garden rises on that property. And we're currently sampling that spring as a part of an isotope hydrology study with NWC and IAEA, looking at the impacts of artificial recharge. But it's hypothesized that the water coming from that spring is coming from further up in the St. Catherine Hills. If you see Kitson Town over by this side, and Colburn's Gully coming down, Mountain River Cave. So you have the Waterbound Cave, water coming from this side all the way down. And it's thought that all of this comes down and comes out at Spring Garden Spring right here. So the previous slide had it's further north, was the location, and Spring Garden Spring comes out right here. We've seen in the past this year, before the rains came, the water, when the drought was hitting, the head of the spring was actually dry. The first time that I had seen it dry in a very long time, like dusty dry. But we went out there this past week, and it's because of the rain, it's all up and flowing high again. So we can see that there's a lot of dynamic flow there. It's very responsive to rainfall, and we'll see how the groundwater levels compare with that, with groundwater further downstream. Looking at the Dry Harbor Mountains, if you see the Laughlands Great River, historically they've been successful rhodamine tracing of the Blue River sink to multiple risings on the north coast at Pear Tree Bottom, Laughlands Great River, and Roaring River. That's historically. And they also looked at the close proximity of the Blue River sink to Bottom River Cave, suggesting that that may also drain to Laughlands Great River. We at WRA performed a dye trace investigation of Blue River sink at other locations last year, and that investigation confirmed the direct connection to Bottom River Cave, Pear Tree Bottom, and Laughlands Great River. It also confirmed, well, I'm going to talk about the other one in a bit as well, because we, in conjunction with this dye trace we did at Blue River sink, we also tried to follow up on the dye trace of the Cave River, because looking at the Rio Bueno, the Cave River flows off the central inlier, sinks near Inland Town, and historically that showed that it rises at Darnock Spring, which is the head of the Rio Bueno. You also have Quashie River, which flows in Trelawney, which they did an initial test in 1965 that wasn't successful, but they did spore testing that seemed to come up at Darnock Spring. This should be Dorncoch, not K, my bad. The Low River rises in Lorimers in Trelawney also and sinks. This had appeared likely to drain into Darnock, but before our testing, there had been no historical testing of that spring. So we did a dye trace test on Quashie River and Low River in 2018, and this test confirmed the connection of Low River to Rio Bueno, and it reconfirmed the connection of Quashie River to Darnock. And we, at the same time, we did the one I mentioned at Blue River, Bottom River. We did a dye trace at Cave River at the same time, and that Cave River dye trace reconfirmed the connection with Darnock, but it also proved that there is no connection between Cave River and Blue River sinks, because the dye we injected at Cave River came out only at Darnock, or the dye we injected at Blue River and Bottom River came out only at Laughlands and Pear Tree Bottom, but they didn't come out at Darnock at any point in time. So, all right, well, you can skip this slide. So this map is showing the location of the Blue River sink, which is not this point right here. This point is an old point, which was done in error. My team spent a lot of time in the field trying to find this sink, and it wasn't here. The actual site of the Blue River sink is right around here near McNee Caves. There's a big blue hole in this area that is an NWC source, and I think that spring provides the water that goes into the Blue River caves. And the injection we did at Blue River, we saw that the water comes out at various locations. It rises and sinks, and finally rises out here and sinks at Bottom River Cave, which is right here. So we did the dye injection at Blue River sink here and Bottom River Cave here. We proved that the water that comes from here does flow and come here. It's the same water. And then this water comes out further upstream. We also had some springs here at Little River. We had a receptor here and another one here. And there was no connection between these sinks here and this sink right here. So we're trying to investigate to see where does this water go. It's pretty likely that this water sinking here may come out at Rio Pedro, or it may flow towards White River. We're not sure as yet, but we're going to be investigating that in the near future. And if you look at this map, this shows the Rio Bueno sub-WMU. And the slide we just saw, looking at Blue River sink, is in this region right here. Oops, I'm sorry, I might have been looking at the wrong the wrong screen with the mouse. So the Blue River sink is in this region right here, where we investigated. And what we injected here came out at Pear Tree Bottom River around this side, and Laughland's Great River around this side. So those are the two where the injection that we put here came out at this region, but it did not come out at Rio Bueno, that's Donna criteria. It did not come out there. And interestingly enough, we also monitored springs, some of the springs that you see coming in this line right here. We monitored the springs to see if there was any connection, and none of the springs seem to reflect any dye coming out from any of the injections. So we see where the water that sinks here comes out at the source, comes out at the coast at this side, but there doesn't seem to be any connection between the water that comes out here that goes further to the coast. So we're doing a project in the next few years to look at using isotope hydrology to see what is the exact connection between this water here and the water that comes out here. Why does the water that sinks here come out, but it doesn't come out at these springs? And then looking further at the Rio Bueno side, you see where the Cave River, which actually sinks in this region, comes out at Darnock Head. The Low River, which you see around here, also sinks and comes out at Darnock Head. And the Quasha River, which comes at this region, also flows, sinks, and comes out at Darnock Head. And in the topical matter, you'll notice that this striped area is the declared Cockpit Country Protection Area. And this area right here is a proposed mining lease for the bauxite mine. So you see that all of the water that comes out of Rio Bueno, somehow it flows underneath all of these areas. And so there's a lot of concern. We're trying to figure out and establish whether or not mining activity will have an impact on water quality. That has not yet been proved or disproved, but we're going to try to see what is the actual science that shows what happens there. But you can see that it's a very interesting topic and a very interesting area where there's a lot happening. And this is the hydrostratigraphy of the Dry Harbour Basin. And you'll see the caves, the blue dots are the known caves that are there as far as known as possible. And you can see again where the sinks and rises are. Again, Blue River is at this side. There's a divide right here where the White River White River Watershed Management Unit is on the eastern side, and the Blue Rio Bueno Management Unit is on the western side here. And furthermore, there's a close-up again of the Quasha River sink. You see the Quasha River coming out and sinking here, and you see all the caves in that region. Low River coming out here and sinking and coming up to Darnock, which is off screen. And you'll also note in this side, you see the Martha Brae sub-W, where you have Mouth River flowing on this side. And you'd have thought that Mouth River would flow and sink and come out at Darnock, but it actually doesn't. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And again, looking at Cave River, if you see here all of these caves that shows the flowing and the sinking, the Cave River actually sinks in this region here. When there's a flooding going on, then the river will flow onward and come down to this point. But in regular times, the river sinks around this region and flows down into Noisy Water Cave and then onwards to the Rio Bueno. But it does not flow. You would think it flows to the northeast, but it doesn't. It flows to the northwest and the northwest only. And Rio Bueno rises at Darnock Head, which is down here below Stewart Town, and it flows to the south. And you have two hydro plants on the Rio Bueno down here, which are used to generate electricity. Very strong flow. And you can see some pictures here of Darnock Head. This is the headwaters of Rio Bueno. This picture on the left was taken about 2016, I believe, where the river was in spate during some heavy rainfalls in May. And the picture on the right was taken when the river is at a normal level. This was older than this. This was taken back in about 2014, I believe. And you see it's a very beautiful site. Unfortunately, the site is becoming a party area. So when people are leave garbage and stuff down there, so please don't let it become a party area. But this is the headwaters of the Rio Bueno, and it's a very significant flow, very, very big, very deep flow flowing northward into the Caribbean Sea. And this picture shows some of the injections that we did for the Quasha and Low River injection. This is Mr. Kevin Chambers injecting the rhodamine dye at Quasha River. That caused a bit of a national uproar back in 2017. And on this picture, you see myself and Mr. Desmond Wellington were injecting at Low River in the hills of St. Anne. And this is the sink right here, where the water is not standing, it's actually sinking. If you look at it, when you inject the dye it just swirls and swirls and disappears on its way to the Rio Bueno. And this was the first time that this site had actually been tested. We're almost halfway through. And the next area is in the Rio Hole in Monique side, where you have the Monique Blue Hole, and this outflows into the Rio Hole, which goes down to Walton Sink. And this is thought to drain towards the White River, which contributes to the Mount Plenty Spring. And no direct dye tracing has been done here. There was a study that used sodium contamination coming from Rio Tinto that showed the levels of sodium levels increasing coming from the then active, with the wastewater treatment pond, the big red pond over by Rio Tinto, over by Mount Russell. That's been shut down now. But that was used as a proxy to establish the connection of the groundwater flow to that region. But no dye tracing has yet been done. So one thing that we want to do in the future is to use dye tracing to establish that matter. I see your questions. I'll answer the questions I'll just say the dye tracing in the Quashi River. We had injected the dye and did not notify the public at that point in time. So we thought that the dye would have reached the sink, but the dye actually flowed in the river for a time, and person saw it and videoed and put it on YouTube saying the world is coming to an end, where there's, the earth is bleeding, etc. And it was, it went viral in a sense, and people were very, very agitated. We actually had to go on Smile Jamaica to kind of tell everybody it's not harmful. The dyes are, it's non-toxic. It'll dissipate very quickly. It's not going to be harmful at all to anybody. All of these are non-toxic dyes. And so the White River, there's a lot of text, but basically say that the White River has a dual nature. It's in the upper reaches, it's like a surface water stream where it's dependent most upon rainfall. But once it goes past Lucky Hill Pen and Mount Plenty Spring, it becomes a significant groundwater stream with a very heavy flow that provides water to NWC, provides hydroelectric power. And you may know it from the famous Spanish Bridge, which has also become a significant party spot and a place where a lot of people like to go and swim. So the White River is a significant place that we want to do some more dye trace testing on to kind of verify the origins of it, coming from these minor springs that are here and other flows coming from Rio Ho and other places. We want to show what exactly is happening there, especially also looking at Lucky Hill Pen, which is currently under investigation as a site for potential water for NIC and NWC in that region. So here you see the Monique area. This is the lake of Monique, which usually comes when there's a lot of rainfall. And the Monique Blue Hole and the Rio Hole should be here, but Rio Hole comes and flows and sinks around this region. And it started, the Rio Hole comes out in this region, coming out at Mount Plenty. And then you see there the Lucky Hill Caves, where there's water in this region also coming out into the White River. And coming from Orange Hall in this area, there's a lot of water. Up here, coming from Guy's Hill, the river is very seasonal. It seems very dry, but once you pass Lucky Hill, the river becomes more significant and becomes more groundwater flowing down, providing hydroelectric power and water to various users. This is the hydrostrat for that region. And yeah, the hydrostrat again for White River. Seasonal here, or surface water flow in this part, with springs, but significant groundwater flow in this area going further upstream. And this is in the downstream region. You can see here where the water comes out, and then the hydroelectric dams are at this area and this area thereabouts. And then it comes out toward those areas where it comes out. You'll see the water coming into the sea, close to Sanssouci in that region. And also the water, so we're trying to see what happens now, if there's any connection between these springs and the water that's going to be happening up here. That's for future study. The second to last basin looking at is the Martha Bray Basin. I talked about Mouth River earlier, and you would think that that would flow to Darnog, but it actually comes out at Fontabelle, rising in Chilani, which then flows and comes out at the Potosi Springs in the Martha Bray riverbed downstream in the Martha Bray Basin. So in that region here, you'll see where we have Mouth River, which flows and sinks right off here, coming off the basal aquifer into the limestone. And then it comes out at Fontabelle, which is, I don't see Fontabelle on this map here. I think it's Fontabelle is around this area here. But then this one here is the Windsor Caves. Here's Fontebelle rising. It comes out at this side, and then from here, the waters from Mouth River flows, comes out at Fontebelle Spring here, and then comes out further upstream in the Potosi River boils. While the head of the waterway is here at Windsor Caves, and there hasn't been any dye trace testing there as yet to see if water from Mouth River comes out in the caves here. But this is in the heart of the Cockpit country, so all of this area is actually very rugged and hard to get to. Looking at the Tangle River and D side in Martha Brae, which rises in St. James and comes across, they have multiple streams that rise to form the Tangle River, which sinks twice at Peterkin and Rota Caves. And that rises at D side, in the Roaring River at D side, and it's showing that there's a possible rising at Springfield. And the historical data was showing that some of the water from Rota sink goes directly to D side, while some goes to Springvale. In 2017, the WRA's first dye trace investigation was to try to trace the Tangle River and the leaf sink to confirm where those went. And we confirmed that the Tangle River rises at Springvale and D side going to the Martha Brae, while the leaf sink goes directly to D side. And I can show that in the map here. Where Rota Cave, we injected at this point, which is near to Maroon Town in Trelawney. So this water sank and came out at this location here at Springvale, and then it sank again and came out at D side, Roaring River at D side. And while the injection that we did here, this injection came straight out at this point right here. It did not come out at Springvale, but it went straight to the D side. And this D side flows and sinks and it flows and comes right into the Martha Brae in this region here. And the flow that I spoke about at Pantrapant comes out at the Potosi Boils, which is further downstream in this region of the Martha Brae on this side. And the Martha Brae Windsor Caves, well, this is a lot of words, but they're basically saying that the headwaters in Windsor Caves, where you have the Windsor Cave Research Facility, those are the headwaters, but there's been no drainage at this area as yet. So that's a place for future study, saying that where we're going to try to see where exactly does this flow or flow come from, its headwaters for the Martha Brae. And Roaring River, I just spoke about, we did the tracing there coming from this side, and they connect at Bunkers Hill and they go on to the sea. So one more thing is that at Potosi, that's where a lot of groundwater flow comes out again, coming from Mouth River, and there's no further loss or gain from the river going below Potosi. So from Potosi going downwards, that's where you see most of the Martha Brae flow coming down that provides water to the NWC treatment facility further down near to Martha Brae near the coastline. And just showing the map of that, where we did the risings. So the sink that came from this side, coming up at Springvale, and coming on from this side down into Martha Brae at this area, coming here, and then flowing down into the sea. You see the water boil. This is where most of the Martha Brae flow comes from Mouth River, and all the other groundwater discharge coming out of the Martha Brae basin. And skip over the Black River for now. That's pretty well known, just to show that the Black River begins in Trelawney from Hector's River and comes all the way down from this side, coming all the way down past Warsaw into One Eye River, otherwise called Noisy River. And then that sinks in a cave down by Appleton, and it comes up again. And flows down where you see the joint of Bagotty River, and then goes down into the Black River Morass. One problem that we're trying to find out some more information about is the Goury Cave. That's a big cave in Manchester. There's a huge stream under there, but where it's coming from and where it goes, nobody knows. So one thing that we want to look at in some point in the future is to do a dye trace investigation at Goury Cave to see where exactly does that flow go to. And this is the area of Goury Cave. So in closing, these are the potential sites that we have done and we want to look at for future investigations, confirming the rising of the Rio Ho to show exactly how does that connect with the White River, if at all. We did that confirmation of the Low River sink to Darnup. We have proved that, so we're very happy for that research. We want to do further investigations of the Windsor Cave system in Martha Brae. and investigating the Guri Cave sink. That's going to be a very big project if it's taken on because of the region where it is. And we're doing right now, we're doing a re-investigation of Pedro River sink and other rises in Upper Recovery. And there are still many options in Jamaica to check for dye tracing. We haven't even looked yet at the Hydrobasin and other places in Manchester. But we can see that dye tracing is a very interesting and engaging area of research. And it's hopeful that in the future we can continue to build upon that in the Water Resources Authority. We can better understand and apply and manage the island's streams in the karstic hydrology regions. Thank you very much. The floor is open for questions. So back to you, Madam Kamaria.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I have a question. In order for you guys to conduct dye tracing, do you have to go to other authorities to get permission, or you guys just do?
We don't have to go to anyone for authority. It is best practice for us to alert the media, the public. So when we're doing injection, they'll know, saying that there's an advisory going out that the Water Resource Authority intends to do dye tracing in this region. So if you see the water being changed of color, you don't have to be alarmed. It will dissipate soon. It's non-toxic, etc. The dyes are shown to be non-toxic, so there's no permit from NEPA in that regard. It's not like a contaminant per se. So all we do is to mainly give persons notice that the water is going to be changing color, and so they can know to not wash their clothes or be able to know what to do if they see the water changing color.
Okay, thank you. There's a question in the chat, I believe, from Ms. Alex.
Yeah, so I saw the question. There are different dyes that can be used in terms of, it's not necessarily the color itself, but the type of dye and what you're trying to do. If you're in a region where the water may be exposed to sunlight and the dye may break down, you want to use a dye that is more resistant to photoelectric effects. So you might choose something like I don't know what to quote, like rhodamine might be more resilient to that. If you have something where it's going to move pretty quickly, you can use something like fluorescein, which can be, it breaks down, but it's also quick and easy to use. You want to consider the environment that you're in, because it could be as well that some of the dye may absorb. If you're in a clay environment, for example, some of the dye might absorb to sediment in the water, and so you don't get the transport as much as you could. There are about 6 or so dyes that are recommended for professional usage. And it's just a matter of you knowing your location, knowing your situation, and evaluating to see which of these dyes is best for your purpose. And also which dye can be identified if you're going to have multiple risings, because the analysis of the dye uses a spectrophotometer where they do a spectral analysis. So the identity of the dye in that spectrum, this dissipation where the peak of the dye is reflected in the photosynthetic photoanalysis, that's going to be important. You want to have a dye, you want to make sure that there's no overlapping peak. So you won't have one peak here and one peak there, and you're not sure which peak indicates which dye, so you don't know which injection actually came out of that location. I see the question, is this the only tool that we use? It's not the only tool, and this is used to evaluate underground river flow, because you're looking at, if you're going to look at groundwater flow, that is usually a lot slower than what you have for underground river flow or conduit flow. The other tool which is used is isotope hydrology, which uses the ratio of stable isotopes of hydrogen and oxygen to kind of identify the origin of waters. And the WRA has done a few projects, or working now in projects with isotope hydrology in concert with the NWC and the IAEA. And we actually have an isotope project that has started this year, where we're looking at using isotope hydrology to study the Rio Bueno sub-WMU. I don't know if you got invitation, but we're having a webinar on this very same topic, where the webinar is going to be held next week on Monday and Tuesday. I want see my team, Alexia. I don't know if you guys can share the webinar registration link in the chat, so these guys can register for it. Or you can go to our website. I'll come to the website in the chat for sure. wra.gov.jm. Yeah, if you go to the website and you click on events, you'll be able to see the events for the webinar. You can sign up for that on Monday and Tuesday. excuse me, so that's one project that we're using as well. So isotope hydrology is one of the biggest tools that is used to help study groundwater flow, both for karstic regions and groundwater flow in general. The ongoing project we have with the Water Commission is looking at the impacts of the artificial recharge facility at Inzu St. Catherine, showing how is that facility impacting the groundwater recharge in the region, also using isotope hydrology. So those are the two main tools that can be used. Groundwater modeling is also a tool, but then again, the modeling will be built on the data that you get from the dye tracing, from flow measurements, and from the isotope hydrology. That helps to guide the modeling that you would create once you have the access to the resources to use those modeling tools. Don't know if there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marshall. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, but I'd like to extend my thanks on behalf of the exec committee from the UWI Mona Geographical Society, and I think we have a member here who will do the vote of thanks. Ms. Brooks.
Hello, good afternoon. You guys hearing me?
Yes,
Yes, we are.
Okay. On behalf of the UWI Geographical Society, Mr. Marshall, I want to thank you for a very insightful and detailed presentation on dye testing, explaining the uses, and giving an adequate explanation of the various studies that have been done in Jamaica. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Kamisha, and thank you, Mr. Marshall, for coming again and giving us this informative presentation. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.